Welcome back, everybody. The Fed has made their most recent announcement, and the economy is looking better than we thought. The GDP data is out, and the economy is looking better than we thought. But the real estate market is still frozen. Not much is happening. So, what's going on there? If things aren't as bad as they say on the news, why is the real estate market not responding? Why are we still seeing the lowest volume of closed sales that we've seen in forever? We're going to talk about that today. Welcome back to the Informed Homebuyer Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Curtis. And as always, I have my co-host with me, Dave Miller. How's it going, Dave?
Good, Rich. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this one.
All right. So as you, yeah, I know it's hard to look forward to this news sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
So as always, we watched Jerome Powell's Fed announcement, went through numbers for you, so you don't have to. So Dave, you want to give us sort of the quick summary of what the Fed just announced today?
Yeah. So quick summary is that inflation is still, gauged as moderately higher and unemployment is in balance. So the two Fed charters are managing employment and inflation. And so basically they came and said, we're not making any changes this go around. There was a little dissension on that when you heard, or if you were watch Powell speak, there were, two board members that suggested a quarter point decrease in rates, which is kind of, an anomaly from, previous meetings. But at the same time, just reiterated that the data shows and the trailing data shows that we're holding steady, and primarily with, employment being supply and demand for workers have really both slowed, but they've slowed in tandem. So there's not a threat, so typically if employment slows and inflation's in check, they will lower the rates to stimulate employment. But if they lower the rates to stimulate employment, then inflation, they're going to have inflationary issues. So with what employment's doing, they're holding steady, and also didn't give real indication of what's going to happen the next meeting, other than they're going to look at the data and make a determination then.
Yeah, and the numbers were a little muddy. So our first round of GDP data, Q1, which has now had all three readings done, it started out at about negative 0.3 and it ended up at about negative 0.5. So we had negative GDP growth in Q1. And the big question was, is Q2 going to be negative? Because that would meet the technical definition of recession. So everybody was sort of holding their breath for this data. And what did our new GDP numbers come in at? This is just the first round, of course, but
yeah, came in at 3%. So, looking at that was much higher. And I'm just going to look the expected number for
like 2.4 or 2.7 or something.
Yeah, it was 2.4, and we came in at 3%. And basically, what Powell said is if you were to basically average the first two quarters, because of, looking at the tariff impact on that, we're still positive from a technical level on GDP, which means the economy is actually relatively strong from his perspective.
Yeah, right. They did sort of mention that people pre-running and pre-buying in advance of the tariffs skewed the numbers. So it might not be a solidly +3, but it is still plus, and plus is all we needed to say we're not in a recession.
Yep, that is correct.
He's also saying that because of the pausing of the tariffs, he was saying the full effect of the tariffs has not yet been felt. He sort of said there's two scenarios here, that this will be a one-time step up in costs. So all the costs go up once and then it settles out, or it could cause some runaway inflation. We don't know which way it's going to go because we haven't seen the full effect of the tariffs as of now. And of course, new tariffs could pop up at any moment. So we're going to wait and see on this one.
Yeah. And I think the other part of that for those viewers that are watching this, and he came out and had the question a couple times and even stated housing is slow. Housing is slow, but never once did he give any indication.
He used the word weak.
Weak. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, nobody likes to hear that.
Yeah. No one likes to hear that, but didn't come out with any, suggestions or any plan in terms of what to do to, strengthen that. And we just know, it's either Fed buying program, there's nothing, no indicators that anything's going to be done, just currently just watching inflation and employment.
Yeah. And I think, like they decided to stick and stay. I think it is notable, as you say, that this is the first non-unanimous decision, as far as I
Mhm.
remember, in the, since we've been tracking it since they started working on this in, July of 22. I feel like this is the first one I remember where they publicly indicated it was not a unanimous decision.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it yeah.
so I think that is pointing to the fact that some members on the committee are starting to feel like it's time to loosen up the Fed policy. So we could see some reductions by the end of the year, maybe a 1 or 2 quarter point reductions by the end of the year. We don't know. We're going to have to sort of stick and stay offline. When we were talking about this, I was saying to Dave, I feel like Jerome Powell is like a guy who just found cover in a firefight. He had the inflation, the post-COVID inflation going on. Then he had Trump slinging tariffs every which way and all kinds of chaos in the economy. And he just found cover. And the first thing, if you find cover in a firefight, the first thing you do is not stick your head out and say, "Hey, what's happening?" Right? You just stay put and don't do anything. And this meeting felt a lot like that. Hey, the bullets didn't hit us. We got through this first round of economic chaos from the Trump chaos and the tariff chaos, and we're actually coming out looking okay. Let's just stay where we are and assess and see what happens next. That was the vibe I got from him.
Yeah, same vibe I got, and the fact that reiterated, always prepared to make adjustments, but until that time comes, status quo.
Yeah, and unfortunately for us, that status quo is, what's the ballpark of interest rates right now, Dave?
Yeah, we're still in the high sixes. We did see a little reprieve in interest rates. I'm seeing, some obviously based on credit score and down payment and loan amount, all that good stuff. But, mid to high sixes. So we definitely are seeing these, they have eased a little bit when you look at the 30-year mortgage-backed security. And, for those viewers out there that are looking at the 10-year treasury, I want to say we're hovering 436. So that number today, right now, just ticked up 437. Add 2.5 to that, and that typically is going to be the average 30 year. So, you're looking at 6.8, the typical 30 year. But again, below the 7% mark, we're just not seeing, and we're at some levels of floors of support in the mortgage-backed security. So if we can maintain this pace for, into next week, we might start see some improvements in the bond market that would again help mortgage interest rates ease a little bit more. Yeah.
That would be nice, but still, overall, my impression is we aren't going to see anything. If we saw 6.5 by the end of the year, I'd be pretty excited. I'm
Yeah.
not
And
feeling like
yeah,
we're going to see a lot below that by the end of
right.
this year.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think for those viewers that are watching this, if you're hoping for, rates in the fives, don't hold your breath. Maybe at some point in 26, that'll happen. It's not happening this year. Um,
Yeah.
y-
And we
y-
did talk to offline that invariably, every time one of these announcements happens, the president doesn't get what he wants. He wants a lower Fed funds rate because he just racked up a bunch of additional debt with the big bill and he needs to borrow at cheaper prices. So he's putting that pressure on the Fed to drop that rate. And invariably, whenever these announcements happen, he comes out, trashes Jerome Powell, and says, drop it to 1%. So I expect to see that again. I also expect Jerome Powell to say, no,
yeah,
I'm not doing that, just like he has been. So I wouldn't, if you're watching this and you see on the nightly news tonight that, Trump says, too late, Powell hosed us again, and I'm going to make him drop to 1%.
yeah.
Unless he fires the man, I don't personally see that happening.
Well, he wouldn't also say that. He would also have a nice little whiteboard with a bunch of different countries listed on there, a flow chart of who has lower interest rates and where they're at comparatively.
Yes.
So,
Who
yeah,
has lower interest rates and a better golf course? Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, so I think that's just rhetoric coming out of the White House, and that, I think it's worth filtering out that noise. We don't see the Fed; they haven't kowtowed to that pressure yet. They've been very public in saying they have their dual mandate to keep maximum employment and minimum inflation, and that's all they're doing. I think they're doing a pretty good job with that. I don't expect to see them buckle on that. So I don't see a lot of interest rate reprieve as much as we all would want it. And believe me, Dave and I are on this boat with you. We would love to see interest rates come down, not to 1%. I don't even want to see them come down to 3 or 4% because
no,
to 2 or 3% because that's what's keeping the market stuck, which is what we're going to transition into now, why it's stuck. But I would love to see fives, would love to see fours, that those are good, like historically great interest rates, that don't cause major economic problems down the
yeah,
road. Um,
yeah. I
What's that,
think
Dave?
I might see you skipping around if we're in the fives. Like, I'd be
Yeah,
happy to see that, right? Like,
yeah,
um,
yeah. Hell, if
eh,
we get in the fours, Dave, I'll do some interpretive dance on the podcast,
right,
man.
yeah, a
Just
couple flips in there too. Yes, I don't know that I want to see that or what you'd be wearing, but yeah, I
Now, how many
think
years are we into this? It shifted in July of 22. So July of 23, July of 24, July of 20. We're 3 years into this.
yes, yeah, and I think kind of getting to also the other part of the theme of this of things being just stagnant. I think we're going to see that for the balance of this year. And I don't know if even if rates were to come down, if we're going to see a huge, and when we talk about rates coming down, we're talking eighth point, quarter point. So if you meet the fundamentals, it's no reason to not go buy a home right now. Especially, please don't hold your breath and hope that rates are going to come down into the fives before you do anything. We're just seeing just
No.
not a lot of movement, right? Just nothing's really happening. So we're not going to see any major swings on rates. I think more people are holding out and hoping for additional values to come down, which is, I don't know, Rich, more likely than rates coming down in the short term.
More likely, but shockingly stubborn as well at the moment, which is a good segue into
Yeah.
essentially we have a market right now that is frozen. It's kind of in stasis. Not a lot is happening. We were just running through the charts before the show, and just for locally here, Placerville, you've got your seasonal trend of listings going up, up, up from sort of January. It's backwards with the camera, so I think I'm trying to go left to
Oh,
right on
yeah.
the graph,
Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
going right to left. You
Yeah.
guys get what I'm saying. Left to right upswing in listings every month from January to June, which is a normal seasonal trend. It is year over year up in terms of inventory as well. But what we're not seeing with that is a commensurate increase in closed sales. The closed sales for the last 6 months are essentially flat, little tiny spikes here and there, but essentially flat. And we're seeing that nationwide. We had um, a nationwide decrease, in the amount of new housing contracts last month, such that they believe we are on path for 2025 to be even lower overall sales volume nationally than 2024, which was the lowest overall sales volume in the last 30 years in real estate. So we're going to post up a new award that nobody wants here probably this year for low sales volume. And that I think is due to a lot of factors that we talk about a lot, and it can get a little overwhelming to do them all at once, but we're going to try to run through them quickly here. So what's going on is we have sellers with a lot of equity, which is a position we're not always in. And we have sellers that not only do they have that lot of equity, but the debt service they do have on it is at 2.5 and 3.5%, pandemic era interest rates. And then we have a market that has been a strong seller's market for so long that we have seller expectations pinned at high price levels. Now we have buyers seeing economic turmoil in the market. We have buyers seeing year over year increases in inventory. The inventory has settled out a little bit here locally in Placerville, but at one point a couple of months ago, we were up 60, 70% year over year in terms of inventory. So from a buyer perspective, they're going, woo, finally relief. There's a lot of houses on the market. The prices are going to come down. I'm going to get out there and splash around and hit some lower ball offers and try to actually be able to afford something. And the sellers that came to market either got those offers or got no offers because they came to market at sort of pandemic level prices. And instead of dropping their prices, they took their ball and went home. We're seeing a massive national delisting trend. We've got full videos on that on the playlist for the Informed Homebuyer Podcast playlist. You can check that out. While you're there, by the way, hit the like button, hit subscribe, click that little bell so you don't miss another video with crucial updates with us helping you pick the signal from the noise and keep track of what's going on in the real estate market. But that delisting trend, we're seeing that not just nationally, where delistings are at 47, 48%, so nearly up 50% year over year. Locally here in Placerville, we had 7 homes cancel for every 1 home that listed in the month of June. So that's a net loss of 6 listings. And we see that in the inventory. The inventory is back down again. We're at 3 months of inventory, which is really not a strong seller's market, but definitely not buyer's market territory, just barely fighting to get to neutral market territory.
Yeah.
So we have, what's that, Dave?
I was gonna say, Rich, when I look at that and you're talking about, I love the analogy of take your ball and go home. And I've mentioned this on several of these previously, is sellers really look at, they're basing their value of their home at the peak of the market, right? And they weren't ready to sell at that point in time, and that market has softened. And so they
Yeah.
think I've lost 50,000, 100,000 in value. No, you're only down what you didn't, because you didn't sell at the peak. But
Right.
are you motivated to sell? Because maybe if you're not motivated to sell at fair market value, what someone's willing to pay, then it is what it is. And I kind of you equate that to when mortgage interest rates, when consumers are, you get kind of used to that number. We've been in over sixes for a fair amount of time now, between 6 and 7%. That's now normalized, but it took over a year for people to just accept that rates weren't going back down into the threes or fours, that we're in the sixes, and there's a little bit of activity there, and people are just accepting that's a reasonable, fair market rate. Sellers, I think, are just the same boat, that they are not accepting yet that their value is $50,000 or $100,000 below what it was at the peak. If this exists, if this goes on for another 3-6 months, if they're motivated enough, they're going to be accepting that this is just the value of my home.
Yeah, and I think right now the question is, it's very unpredictable. How many months is that going to take for people? Because we've never been in this situation before where sellers had to adjust to a changing or a declining market while having a lot of equity and low interest rates, and being like, well, maybe I just don't adjust and I just stay. That is the situation. And so I think that's what, and we hit on this a lot, but that's what's keeping this market stuck. We are really still experiencing the negative effects of, and it's hard to say whether it was a poor decision at the time, because the COVID economy was also a once in a generation problem that they were trying to solve with these low interest rates. So I'm not an informed enough economist to say that it was a bad choice. But what I can say is there were consequences. Good choices and bad choices all have consequences, right? Dave's a dad. I'm a dad. I have this conversation 14 times a day, usually just with the wall. There's nobody listening, but I have this conversation. But
the wall didn't talk back to you either. So
yeah. Somebody's talking back, but even good choices have consequences. And the consequences of these 2 and 3% interest rates are people don't want to give them up. And if I'm going to give them up, I better be getting something in return. And the perception that I'm getting a lot less for my house isn't giving me the warm and fuzzies that I'm getting something in return for giving these up. And that's what's keeping this market locked. And I think you hit on something really important there when you mentioned market value. I think a lot of people don't know the actual technical definition of market value. So when a realtor comes into your house for a listing presentation, if they're a good realtor, they should be presenting to you a comparative market analysis that shows you comps and what things have sold for. And here's what I think your house is going to sell for. An appraiser comes out and does a different kind of calculation, a different value. So what the realtor says and what the appraiser says, you can often get different numbers. You get 3 realtors in there, you get 3 different numbers. The reason for that is the true definition of market value is what a willing seller is willing to sell for, and what a willing buyer is willing to accept. And the trick here is that the professionals in the industry, Dave and we don't have levers to pull there. We're not the sellers or the buyers. So we can inform people that the market has shifted. We can inform people that their asset is worth less value. We cannot make anybody offer more or take less, right? And so right now, what we're seeing is sellers aren't willing to take less and buyers aren't willing to pay more. So they're not able to meet in the middle at market value, and the market is frozen, flat, and stuck. And so we're seeing these macroeconomic things going on where first, tariffs, the world's ending, we're going to be in recession. Oh, we just got the numbers. Just kidding. The world didn't end. We're not in recession. Everything's okay for now. Let's wait and see. But the real estate market is not riding that wave with us, because we got buyers on one side, sellers on the other side, and they are not finding a point where they're willing to meet in the middle. And until one of those things breaks loose, we don't have a market that's moving in. We either need a ton more inventory that forces sellers' hand to drop, right? Or we need buyers to feel a lot more confident about their employment or get a bunch more money to come to the table, right? Or we need both parties to get more realistic in the market that we're in, and one be willing to offer a little more and one be willing to take a little less. And right now we're not seeing it. We're seeing things being pretty stuck out there.
Yeah, it's pretty frozen. And like you said, the local data, the national data, all that is being validated in the numbers. And even talking to people, and I even asked you the question offline earlier, Rich, if you go to a listing appointment, and it's not free for you to do a listing. I mean, you put a lot of time and resources and expenses into a listing. Yeah. You're probably not going to take a listing if someone's not realistic about price and their willingness to sell. And we probably saw a bunch of realtors put homes on the market at a price that the seller wanted, but wasn't market value. So those
Yeah.
delistings were a combination of people just testing the market and realtors probably not being realistic with them, is my take on that.
Yeah, I mean, in any industry, there's varying degrees of skill and there's varying approaches and varying philosophies. So some realtors, they will, and there are realtors in my market, big realtors who have the most signs in the ground, and they ran a sign in the ground business model. Up, I don't. You want $1 million for your $300,000 house? Fine,
Mm.
sign in the ground. Let's do it. They also don't spend much money marketing any of these listings because they know they're not going to sell. But they get enough signs in the ground. They get enough listings. It's a volume game. They'll sell enough houses to feed their family. I've always taken the opposite approach, which is I'm going to tell you the truth about what the house is worth, how long it'll take to
Right.
sell, what it's really going to take to get it done. I invest well over $1,000 before I even get your home to market, and then several thousand more while marketing your house. And I'm only going to do that if we are in agreement about a price that sells. So I turn down a lot of listings in markets like this. And there's a third kind of agent that says, I'm going to put it up at your crazy price. I'm going to let the market beat you up, and I'm not going to spend any of my marketing money until you get beat up. And then I'll start marketing it once I get to a realistic price. But guess what? I'm still the realtor. I still get paid, right? In my model, I pass on the listing. By the time that guy gets realistic, they might still be salty that I was the guy that told them their house wasn't worth enough, and they might go with somebody else. And I lose some listings that way. But it is what it is. The people who work with me know they're getting told the truth, and we come to market at prices that will work. So that is, you're seeing a lot of that, where if you've got a sign in the ground model, or you're not willing to be the bad guy and tell people the truth, we get this testing market right now. I don't think it serves anybody, because it's keeping things stuck. Right now is time to have hard conversations around the table, because I'm perfectly comfortable telling you your house is worth 100 grand less than you think it is, and you telling me then I don't want to list it. That's a great conversation. I told you the truth. You made a decision. I
Right.
don't get paid. That's fine. But you're also not bringing a listing to the market that's never going to sell, going to skew the numbers, going to make everything unrealistic. So I think it is time, to your point, to have harder conversations around the table, and for sellers to maybe not be splashing around, but only come to market if they're really, serious about selling. But
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from what's that, Dave?
Well, I was gonna say, and you got to be motivated. You have to be kind of made up your mind that you're determined to sell, and and that you're willing to listen to what the market is bearing. And if you're not there, if you're not realistic about it, then you're either going to go on the market and you're going to sit there for a while, or you're going to delist your house and wait for maybe another time in the future where who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are kind of in that space of, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait and see.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. It's a weird market right now, and wait and see is a viable strategy.
Yeah.
A lot of the have to sales, the divorce sales, the death sales, those sorts of things, they're still coming to market. So the market is still moving. We're still posting up those kind of sales. But I think the people who don't have a have to are in a weird position of, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to spend that much. I don't know if I'm going to take that little. And so if you don't have a have to right now, I think it's a harder market to wrap your mind around what to do.
Sure.
That's what we're here for. That's why we keep bringing you this information week over week, so you can make your own choices on this. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Sellers, are you feeling like it's time to come off those pandemic era prices and come down, or would you rather just keep your cheap interest rate and stay? Buyers, I'm hearing a lot already from you buyers in the comment
Mm.
section that you're over how high the prices are and you're not going to do it. But let us know in the comments down below where you guys are at, because that's sort of our market research and our data right now. We are all in the same boat looking for what's going to break this market loose, and we're interested in what you guys have to say as well. So, all right, I think that's a good place to wrap this one, folks. That is the updated data through the Fed. Essentially, the economic data was mostly a big nothing burger when it comes to real estate. And so what's going to get this market moving again is you guys, you buyers and sellers. It's in your hands now. So let's see where this goes. We'll be back to you next week with more real estate insights. If you've made it this far, we greatly appreciate you watching, and greatly appreciate your dedication to your own financial education. As always, I'm Rich Curtis. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Dave Miller. Thank you.
We'll see you guys on the next one.